Hello everyone, and in this tutorial I will show you how to crochet this braided hat. This is a winter toque and the braid adds a little extra design. I saw this picture online and it's a knitted hat, and I always find creating cable stitches rather challenging for braids. So I decided to opt for the easier version of crocheting instead, and I'm sure you'll find it much easier too. So this project is actually very easy. We do half double crochet and we do double crochet, and we work flat. By working flat, we don't have to work in the round. We don't have to do any increases or decreases. So this is a very straightforward project. If it's your first time creating something like this, then you can definitely create it. The materials I used for this is Caron Simply Soft in pink. It's 100% acrylic, 315 yards per ball, and you need maybe 280 to 300 yards to create this hat, and it's a size 4 medium weight yarn. I used a size 5mm crochet hook for the braid and a 4.5mm crochet hook for the top of the hat, and you need a tapestry needle to sew your pieces together. This hat is fitted for an adult female head, and in this tutorial I will show you how to measure your head so that you can create any size that you want. And I think that's about all you need to know. Everything else we will do together. So thanks for watching. Check out my other videos on my channel and subscribe for more tutorials. So here I have a rough draft of my braid. I'm using a 3 roped braid using 3 strands, and it measures approximately 3.5 inches. So this is using the size 4 yarn with a size 5 crochet hook to create this. So that means that if you are using a similar size yarn and a similar size crochet hook using 3 ropes like me, then yours will approximately be the same width as well. So I will show you how to create that later, but in the meantime we are going to first start with the top of the head. So not the braid, but the top part of the head we're going to start. So if we know that approximately 3.5 inches is the width of the braid, that means the remainder of the head is going to be hat. So if we draw a face here, we can see that the braid is going to cover the ears, right? So between here and here is 3.5 inches. So that'll approximately be maybe an inch above the ear as well. That means that from here to here, we're going to have to create the hat. For this part, I am making mine 8 inches stretched. Yours should approximately be around 8 inches as well. So that means you want to make chains. So take your yarn, create a slip knot, take a 4.5mm crochet hook. So for the braid, I'm using a 5mm crochet hook. For the head part, I'm using a 4.5mm crochet hook. And what you're going to do is chain. Okay, so you're going to keep chaining until you reach your 8 inches, and then you're going to measure the head. So I'll show you. So just to note, when you do it 8 inches stretched, your piece is going to go a little bit over the top of the ear. So when you measure it, it's going to go a little bit over the top of the ear once you stretch it from the middle of the head to here. So approximately here. And that's fine, because after we make it and we curve it together, it's going to shrink. So this is going to shrink up to approximately here, and that'll leave us room for the braid. So don't worry, this is normal to be a little bit over the ear at this stage in the project. So that's why 8 inches is good for me. You double check if it's good for you. So using my 4.5mm crochet hook and the size 4 yarn, I made 30 chains, and when I measure it on a ruler and I stretch it out comfortably, it measures approximately 8 inches. So you want to make sure that you stretch it comfortably to measure your amount. So there's my 8 inches that I wanted. So yours is going to be approximately around the same size, 8 inches. Once you've done your chains, you want to take your head and you want to measure it against the head. So take the top of the head, take your chains, place it there, and just stretch it all the way down until you hit approximately a little bit below the top of the ear. So pull it until you reach that amount, and then that should give you your length that you want to create your chains. So 8 inches worked for me. Just double check that it works for you as well. And lastly, if you're not too sure, just make sure to create this a little bit longer than shorter, because if it's too short, you're going to have to redo it over again. At least if it's longer and we attach the braid to it later on, we can adjust it and cover it up with the braid. But if it's too short, we have to take it all apart. I found that when I used a measuring tape, the measurement was shorter, so that's why I like to use this chains first to measure it. That'll give me a more accurate perception of the hat. So once I've done that, I found my measurement. Now I'm going to do the rib stitch, and I will show you that now. So for the rib stitch, we are going to, after you do your chains, you're going to chain 2, extra 2, 1, 2. Then you're going to skip the 2 that you made and into the third one from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, this one here, you're going to do a half double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, 3 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops like that, a half double crochet. Then you're going to do 1 half double crochet into each of the chains across all the way to the very end, and I will meet you here. So here I am, I've made it to the end. Now what I'm going to do is turn my work, chain 2, 1, 2. This acts as our first half double crochet. Because it acts as our first half double crochet, this first stitch here that the chain 2 comes out of, we're going to skip on each row. When we start each row, we're going to skip this first one here, and we're going to work directly into the second one, into the back loop only, a half double crochet. And the next stitch, a half double crochet. So each stitch has 2 loops, the front loop, the back loop. We're going to do it in the back loop only, so the loop that's furthest away from you, a half double crochet into each of the stitches all the way across. Then we're going to repeat, do the same thing. Turn your work, chain 2, skip the first stitch into the second stitch, half double crochet into the back loop all the way across. So we're going to keep doing that, and that's going to create our rib stitch. So the width or the circumference of the top of the hat. So just make sure when you get to the end that this beginning chain 2, the second chain of chain 2, counting from the bottom 1, 2, this second chain 2 of each of the beginning of each row is considered a stitch, and you do your last half double crochet into there. So just remember to do that. So what this is going to do is create a rib stitch and the circumference of the head. Okay, so it's going to create the top of the hat and the circumference from here all the way around here. So that's going to create that. Then later on we're going to do the braid. Okay, so we're creating this part now. So to summarize for this round, the braid we're going to do later. The braid width should be approximately 3.5 inches from the bottom of the ear to about 1 inch above the ear. The remainder of the hat is the rib stitch that I just showed you how to create. The 8 inches should measure from the top of the head to approximately right below the top of the ear, and when we close it up in the later steps, it's going to shrink to about 1 inch above the ear, which will give us room for the braid. Okay, so we're working on this part now. It's better to have this part a little bit longer than shorter. If it's longer, then we can always apply the braid over the excess material here and to cover it up. But if it's too short, then you're going to have to redo it all over again. Okay, so just make sure that it's comfortable, and remember to account for the hair that you have here and create this rib stitch, and then I will meet you after that. So when you finish your rib, make sure that you finish one end at the top and the other end at a valley. So here we have the rib, right? You have a top, a valley, a top, a valley. One end is the top that's finished, and the other end is the valley that's finished. Okay, because later on we're going to sew it together so that it's a seamless joint. So here we are, I finished the rib stitch. I did 52 rows, and that measures in inches, approximately stretched about 27 inches or so. And that's going to be the same width as our braid when the braid is completed. The braid completed will also measure approximately 27 inches stretched. So this measurement fits the head for an adult female that I'm basing it off of, for it should approximately fit the size that you want as well. If you need to make any adjustments, you can make that. So the way I'm going to approach that is the rib stitch. I'm going to stop it for now. Once you've finished your length, you're going to stop it, and we are going to move on to the braid. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make the braid now, and we will get back to this later. So for the braid, I'm using 3 strands, 1, 2, 3, and they are each almost 2 inches wide each. And remember, we measured it before together braided, it became around 3.5 inches. So I'm going to show you how to make each braid now. So to make the braid, we are going to do the exact same thing that we did with this rib stitch. The only difference is that we're not going to rib it. We're just going to do row by row, doing our stitches into both loops. So for the rib stitch, we only worked into the back loop, so we're going to go into the both loops for this braid. For the braid, I switched my hook to a size 5mm hook using the same yarn, size 4 yarn. And I chained 103 stitches. So that 103 stitches gave me approximately 30 inches stretched. But remember, when you actually apply these stitches, so in this case I'm doing double crochets, when you apply the double crochets and finish this braid, when you stretch it, it gains more stretch. And when you finish the braid, it becomes about 34 stretched. You can almost see that, 34 inches. So you want to chain 103 if you're using the same materials as me, 103 chains, and then you're going to add 3. So I will show you. So pretend here I did 103 chains, or the amount of chains equal to 30 inches. And then at the end, I'm going to add 3 chains. 1, 2, 3. Here's my 3 I added. Then to start the next row, I'm just going to do a double crochet. So I'm going to skip the next 3 chains that I created, 1, 2, 3 from the hook, and in the 4th one from the hook, I'm going to do a double crochet. So yarn over, insert your hook, 3 loops on hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, double crochet. And I'm going to keep doing double crochets until I reach the end of my chains, like this. So once you reach the end, you're going to turn your work just how we did the rib stitch, and you're going to begin by chain 2, 1, 2. And this is going to act as our first double crochet. Because it acts as our first double crochet, we're going to skip this first stitch here and work directly into the second one here, just like previously, and we're going to do a double crochet into there. So we're going to do a full double crochet into the both loops of the stitch, like normal. So not into the back loop, in both loops. Both loops, a double crochet. And that's just what we're going to do for the remainder of this braid. Okay, so when you get to the end, same thing, turn your work, chain 2, skip the first stitch into the second stitch, double crochet all the way across. And when you're done that, your braid is going to look like this. Okay, like that. So you want to do your double crochets for 4 rows. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And when you're done your 4 rows, you will have your first braid complete. So you're going to end off at one of the ends. When you get to the end, you're going to slip stitch into the center of the braid here. So just insert your hook and complete a slip stitch till you get to the center. We're going to tie in these ends later, so it doesn't really matter where you slip stitch into, as long as it's as neat as you can get it to the center, like this. Now that we're at the center, if we pull it, you can see that we have these stitches here in the middle. These are the stitches that we're going to work into. Okay, so these ones right here. So what we're going to do is single crochet into there. So the first one, insert your hook, complete a single crochet. The second one, single crochet. The third one, single crochet, just like this. And you're going to single crochet all the way to the very end. And when you're done that, this is what your piece will look like. Okay, you've got your single crochet piece in the center and your finished braid. So now once you stretch your braid, it will measure 34 inches as I've shown you. Okay, so that 30 inches chains expands to 34 when you complete this part here. So you want to complete your braid for 3 braids, and then we're going to put it together. So here I am with my 3 braids. They're complete now. We're going to slip stitch into the tops of all 3 of the braids so that they come together so that we can secure it and braid it nicely. Slip stitch like this. So here is our piece. We've put them all together. Okay, now we're just going to lay it on the floor or on a table and we're just going to braid it. So to start your braid, we have 1, 2, 3. You're going to take number 3 and apply it over number 2. Then you're going to take number 1 and apply it over number 3. Then Then you're going to take number 2 and apply it over number 1. To the left, you bring this middle one to the right. You take the top one and you bring the bottom one underneath it, and then you bring it to the left. And at the same time, you want to make sure that you keep it tight. Okay? So it's a basic braid. Nothing too complicated. Bring the bottom one over and the top one to the other side. Bring the bottom one over and the top one to the other side, and you're going to create your braid like that. So eventually it's going to turn out to look a lot nicer than how this looks. So you do yours and I'll fix mine and I'll meet you there. Now that we've done the braid, your ends, just sew them together this way and so that it's secure. So here I am sewing my piece in. I just took a tapestry needle and I'm just sewing them across together like this. Okay, so here I am, I finished the braid, and my braid should measure the width of the rib stitch for the most part. Here to here, it should match 95%. Okay, so here's mine, it pretty much matches, and that's what you're looking for. The rib stitch doesn't have to be 100% matching because they do stretch, so as long as it's very close, that's what we're looking for. And together, as I showed you before, the two measure approximately 27 inches stretch. At this point, if you need to adjust the rib stitch, this is a good time to do it because now you have your braid complete. You can apply it over the rib stitch and you can measure it around the head. Like this, you can put it around the head, measure it so that it's comfortable. And if you feel that you need to extend the rib stitch a little bit further or decrease it, this is the time to do so before we sew it together. So the next step is to weave the end across the top here. So wherever your corner is, that's going to be the top. Cut the yarn and attach it to a tapestry needle. And then we are just going to weave it in just across the top here so that we can close it off. So you're going to just take your needle, attach it into the stitches and pull, and you're just going to weave in and out all the way across, and just keep it loose for now because at the end we're going to pull it and that's how it's going to close. So just like this. Okay, so I'm going to do that and I'm going to meet you at the end over here. So here I am, I've made it to my end. Now we're just going to take off our needle and we're going to pull it and bunch it together. Like that. So there's going to be a little bit of a gap at the top, which is fine. We're going to deal with that later. But in the meantime, before we close it off, don't close it yet, we are going to put it on the head and just measure where we have to attach the braid onto the hat for. So if you put it on the head, you might have to attach the braid higher or lower depending on where this bottom part of the hat sits on the head. So you might have to attach it at the top, maybe lower, maybe all the way down here for the braid. So lay it on the head and figure out how far down you have to attach the braid for the hat. So here I'm back. I've determined that for mine, I'm going to have to lay the braid at the end to cover the ear. So that's where I'm going to sew it. Wherever your braid lays to cover the ear, that's where you're going to sew it. So now we're going to just unravel this part here. We don't have to take this part off, just open it back up. And we're going to sew the hat onto the braid. So to begin that, we're going to sew one end onto the end of the braid like this. We're going to stretch it and sew the other end onto this end. And that's going to give us even all the way around. And then we're just going to sew in between here so that it stays. Taking my tapestry needle and the yarn and I'm cutting it, and for the first end I'm just inserting my hook and stitching it into the braid so that it stays. You can do a tapestry needle or a hook, however way, just so that it can secure. You can even use a pin, okay, and just secure it like that. That's in place, and then I'm just going to go to the other end and take my needle and just start sewing it from here to the other end here. And I'm just going to do a basic sew My sewing skills aren't too great. I'm just going to do a basic sew. You can do a sew however you choose to. We're going to do this and I will meet you once that's complete. So here we are. I finished sewing. This is my piece. This is the underside of it. And this is what it looks like turned around, the good side. Okay, and it's sewn. So now we're almost done. So we're going to take our string from the top here and pull it again so that it comes together. And now we're going to sew it closed. Because it's a rib stitch, I like to do it a certain way. So here's how we're going to sew it together. We're going to take our top and our valley. We're going to apply the top over the valley like this. So you're going to take your needle and you're going to go onto the valley, the stitch from the top down like that, and pull. Pull tight. Then you're going to go up the second stitch on the valley. So now we're at the bottom. We're going to go up on the second stitch on the valley. Now we're at the top. For the top, we're going to work into these stitches in between underneath this lip here. So we have the stitches here, we have stitches here, here, right? All these stitches underneath the lip, that's what we're going to work for the top part. So we went down on the valley, then back up on the next stitch on the valley. Now we're going to into the top. We're going to insert our needle into this stitch here under the lip and pull through one. And then we're going to go through a second one here. So 2. So each section we're going to do 2 at a time. 2 on the top, 2 on the valley, 2 on the top, 2 on the valley. So we did 2 on the top. Now 2 on the valley. We're going to go into the next stitch. Here's our next stitch. We're going to go down. And then go into the next stitch up. So it's 2 on the valley. Now you're going to go on the top. The next stitch here. 1 on the top. And the second one on the top. And you're just going to repeat like that. In the valley, down, up, and then 1, 2 on the top. Down, up on the valley, 1, 2 on the top. So make sure you keep pulling this as tight to try and close this as much as you can and continue all the way down. When you get down to the braid, you can do 2 things. If your braid edge looks nice, you can just sew it together like how we've done as best as you can, or you can close it together if your 2 ends look ugly and just do a sew on the inside like this. Sew it like that. Okay? But that's how we're going to do the invisible for the rib. Finish sewing and I will meet you once we're done. So here's what our piece looks like at the end when we put it all together. So I tidied up the inside here. And I also sewed some stitches across the bottoms here inside the braid, just so that when you pull it on, it doesn't become unraveled or get uneven. It kind of stays in position. So I just did that here, 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 all the way around to give it a little bit more support. And then we're done. So that's your hat. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Please check out my other videos on my channel. And subscribe for more free tutorials. I have a lot more holiday ones coming up this season. Happy holidays.